today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about
how relationships slip to parallel lives when tasks take priority over love. Decisions replace desire. Not that the desire wasn't there, but decision-making became primary because they were swept up in the current. Remember that life is be-do-have. Where we come from emotionally creates the flavor of our life. Partnerships need to be relationships. They need to have an emotional basis. Logistics are a vehicle for us to create the life that we want, the life that we need, the life that we revere. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship, and I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we are talking about when love turns into logistics. That's right, folks. When love turns into logistics, that's when the romance just slips away, and 5 years later, you wake up and ask yourself, how did I get here? We don't want any of that here. Tanya writes, my husband and I don't really fight, but we don't really connect either. Our conversations are about schedules, money, kids, work, and what needs to get done next. We love each other, I think, but it feels like we're managing a life instead of sharing one. When did love turn into logistics? God, that's like poetry. We are going to use that. Love into logistics. Hey, this is such a common problem. It is sad. Many couples confuse functioning well with a good marriage, particularly guys, by the way. In my experience, females are less confused about this. Guys tend to think, well, if we're functioning well, everything's good, and why aren't I getting some? And then they get upset. Whereas women understand that connection is about much more than working well. I have a Brad and a Gwen that I'm working with right now, who work really well together when it comes to the children, but Gwen is very dissatisfied and unhappy, and Brad is only just beginning to understand why. He's only just beginning to see things through her eyes. He doesn't get it. He makes a ton of money. He's done everything right in his eyes. He's checked all the boxes. But the spirit, the emotion, the beingness, who he is in the marriage, is not creating the love and the safety that she needs. Logistics, in this case and in many relationships, slowly replace intimacy without a clear breaking point. It's like you don't really know where it happened or when it happened. It's just all of a sudden you just find out, wow, we're leading a checkbox marriage. This is the new year, and it can highlight this gap for a lot of people. There are a ton of people who get to this point in January having functioned well, or maybe not as well as they could, but still made it through the holidays. And now they're like, wow, it feels so hollow inside. It feels so empty. Where is the closeness? We planned so well, but why didn't we plan for this? This shift doesn't happen because love disappears. It happens because pressure, life increases pressure for, and I want to be clear, the pressure isn't always from the inside. I said in an earlier episode that our culture, I called it the world then. Our culture has a current. Our culture, like the culture of your community, the culture being, what are you seeing on the internet? What are you seeing in stores? Our culture has and that current is got a consistent message of more, better, different. And when we don't pick where our relationship is steering to, we start steering to more, better, and different. And that's exactly how this happens. The pressure of more, better, different grows. I need a bigger house. We need a better house. Oh my God, did you see the renovations they just did? Oh, I love that car. We need to get that car. Oh, that is quite an outfit, etc., etc., etc. Another Brad and Gwen that I worked with were incredibly effective together. They ran a household. Gwen had a side hustle that she was super successful at and that Brad helped her with. Not only that, but Brad had a business outside of the house that Gwen fed into. He would come to her with problems. They would talk to each other about their businesses. They weren't actually working together in a business partnership, but they were business partners. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we can mentor, help, support one another. And they were both very fluent in the language of business, so they were able to do that. Their conversations were super efficient. Gwen was really good at managing details. Brad was really good at the big picture. And so they really leaned into those strengths. And those conversations would be about, what do I need to do? Okay, A, B, C, cool. And then they would check it. Checklists replaced curiosity. They stopped being curious about, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about me? How am I feeling about you? Decisions replaced desire. Not that the desire wasn't there, but decision-making became primary because they were swept up in the current of their work, of the culture. Gwen said, we talk all day, but I don't feel close to Brad anymore. Brad said, I feel like I'm always solving problems. And no matter how many times I think I got it right, I never get it right. They weren't disconnected because they didn't care. They still cared. They were disconnected because their partnership had become a management system, not a relationship. Now, I want to be really clear with you. Partnerships need to be relationships. They need to have an emotional basis and management systems, right? I'm not poo-pooing their accomplishment as business and life managers. They lost. They didn't apply management to their relationship. That's the best way to put it. They didn't realize that you need to. Right? How many of us, when we got married, were told, you need to become a good relationship manager? No one. Or if you were told that, I would like to hear from you, and I want to meet your parents because they did a great job. I know my parents didn't teach me that. At Rich in Relationship, we have a formula that represents this problem, and that is when logistics are greater than love, the result is disaster. Not disaster in terms of function in the world, disaster in terms of the shared vision and the emotional foundation of the marriage. I know as I say that this is resonating, I can feel that it's resonating with someone. I've been there. I know what that feels like. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't have to be like that. And it doesn't mean that you failed. In the last couple of episodes, we've been emphasizing, well, it might mean that you failed, but failure is a positive when we learn from it. And the lesson isn't, I can't believe they did this to me. That's not a lesson, is a principle that we can pull out of it, that we can apply to life, a principle that could apply to all situations. It isn't a principle about a person, a place, or a thing. It's a principle about life that we can reapply. When you can take the principle out of that relationship failure so that you can apply it and make your relationship succeed, then you start to win. There's an instant win just in realizing the principle. And remember that current from the culture or the world, whatever you want to call it, creates pressure. There's pressure from our parents. There's pressure from our siblings, pressure from our friends. There's internal pressure. When we go to social media and look on Facebook and see how great some of our compatriots, our peers have it, and then we compare that to how we're feeling about our own lives, there's pressure. And we think if we just had that boat, car, whatever it is, maybe then we would feel that. Or when we see an advertisement, my favorite is when I see advertisements for guys wearing a certain kind of clothing and they're in fantastic shape. And I think, oh, I wouldn't mind having abs like that. And unconsciously, the connection I'm making is that thing that they're wearing, that hoodie, whatever it is, or underwear, if I just had that, then I would have those abs. That's a pressure. It's unconscious. There's a relationship being set up within us that causes pressure. And so we need to be on guard. We need to be unconsciously aware. We need to be very careful about what we consume because the pressure builds over time. Sometimes life fills up with work demands. Sometimes it fills up with financial responsibility. Sometimes it's parenting pressure. Maybe your kids need to go to a special school. Maybe they need a therapist. Maybe we have a project that we want to accomplish that's going to cost a lot of money, that backyard renovation that is going to make everything perfect. Maybe we want to join a club so we can play golf. Whatever it is that represents to you, that pressure builds up and logistics become greater than love. I got to get this done. Honey, we got to get this done so I can have that. Instead of, I'm going to do everything I can to be as loving and available as possible so that everything we create has a certain flavor. Are you seeing the difference that I'm talking about here? Remember that life is be, do, have. Where we come from emotionally creates the flavor of our life. When we're coming from a place of lack, oh, if I had that sweatshirt, then I'd have those abs. Oh, if I joined that country club, then I finally will have arrived. That's actually a place of lack. And so even when we get it, it's still not enough. We can never fill that hole. But when we start from, I love you, you are my everything, I live for you. When we start from that place, there's nothing we can do that isn't filled with that love, with that reverence. I really want you to get this. Where you come from is everything. And that's why when logistics become greater than love, we cannot succeed. Brad and Gwen, what happened to them? Well, if I'm talking about Brad and Gwen, it's because they came and they worked here with us at Rich in Relationship. And the first thing they found out was that they really needed to reignite their sense of personal dignity and their reverence of the whole and complete person that they had married on the other side. They needed to separate logistics from love. Instead of feeling gratified by getting things done, check, 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 and supporting each other logistically, they needed to support each other in feeling whole, complete, like they were creators instead of accountants, instead of box checkers, right? Because really what we're all doing, the purpose of logistics are a vehicle for us to create the life that we want, the life that we need, the life that we revere. And where we come from, move through those logistics is what creates that experience. Be, do, have, be, do, have, be, do, have. They reintroduce curiosity. Why is it that we're not having the experience that we want? What caused us to stumble? What can we learn from it? Hey, what was that thing? Let's take a look at that. They created transition rituals. We talked about that in the last episode, so that they could set aside work and focus on one another. They created transition rituals so that when they felt like they were failing, they could set the failure aside, stop, reset, re-examine, and learn and abstract principles that would give them success. Thomas Edison, it took him like 1,000 tries to make a light bulb. And when he was asked about this, he said, I view this as it took me 999 times to succeed in making a light bulb. He could have quit at 765 or 842 or even 998. I failed so many times now. Actually, I think the exact quote is, he says, I view this as 999 ways to not make a light bulb. I think that's the exact quote. That's brilliant. And if we approach our marriage and our lives with that attitude, rather than saying, wow, this just isn't working, I quit, how much different would our lives be together? So let's just wrap this up. I want to be clear. This is not your fault if you're experiencing this. It's what the culture teaches us. The drift of the culture teaches us that we need to do. And then we need to have. Actually, the culture teaches us if we have, then we'll do and be. If I have that sweatshirt, then I will do things that allow me to have abs. It's my current obsession. I'd like to see my abs again someday soon. Working on it. No failure. Always getting better. We live in a culture that emphasizes having over being. And so it's not your fault. And our parents have all taught us mostly having over being. No one gave us the handbook. I am giving you the handbook to turn this around. If your partnership feels organized but emotionally a little thin, it's not too late. You can still save it. It's a design issue, not a love issue. If you feel like you love your partner, but you're not in love with them, that's okay. First of all, in love only lasts 2 to 3 years. But you can reignite the kind of love that in love references once you're realigned internally with yourself, then realign together and you can court each other all over again. And it's so much easier than meeting someone new once you feel safe. Now, if you're listening to this episode, you missed our masterclass. so sorry. It was amazing. But you can find all the tools that you need on richinrelationship.com in our free relationship group, The Bridge. Please check it out. Look forward to seeing you there. And in the meantime, have a fantastic day and an amazing tomorrow. And come with us next episode as we continue to explore prosperous partnerships.